Fighting games are notoriously known for being one of the hardest genres of gaming to break into. The intensity and salt from constant one-on-one matches, plus the physical difficulties of motion inputs make it more than a little daunting to many new players. I've played fighting games. Well, I've mashed in them. It's a little success outside of landing random super moves. The only fighting game I've managed to get actually good at is Smash Brothers, and that's probably because it isn't what we'd call traditional. The learning curve for fighting games made them seem unapproachable to me in a way no other genre ever had, even though I've been playing for like 2.5 decades. This is why I find Capcom's success with the new Street Fighter 6 to be nothing less than amazing from a design standpoint. On Steam alone, the daily players tower over even the peaks of other fighting games, and at EVO, the largest fighting game tournament of the year, Street Fighter received a staggering 7,061 entrants, and that's very unusual for those that don't know. I've logged 120 hours as of this moment myself, and half of that has been against other people. The gameplay is of course fun, it's visually appealing to look at, and the music is
super hard-headed. Call me crazy, but you is not my psychiatrist.
Well, no game is perfect. But what I want to focus on is how well Capcom designed Street Fighter 6 to train newcomers and funnel them into the heart of the game, PvP. There are 3 topics that I believe are the reason it is so easy to get into this game: World Tour mode, the training options in Fighting Grounds, and the modern control setup. Each of these serve a different but important purpose in teaching players how the game works organically, but I want to dissect them in order of importance.
Y'all over here about to fight an actual lion? What are y'all doing? I'm not gonna talk about their culture. Also, how did I end up here? Back up.
That's a huge bitch.
First up is the World Tour. On the surface, World Tour is a simple story mode that is filled with content to occupy a casual player's time. You create your own character, and then proceed to tour the world by learning how to fight from the current Street Fighter roster, beating up random citizens, and doing odd jobs around the town, like car demolition. There's more to it, but for the purposes of this video, I won't delve into them. I'm going to start with the importance of the created character. While there are RPG elements that enable you to boost your character to, quite frankly, absurd heights, you are also able to use the fighting style of any member of the current roster that you meet. You play with that style to level it up and earn more of the character's moveset. For example, learning Ryu's style for the first time gives you the Hadouken, but not his Tatsumaki or Shoryuken. This move can then be slotted for use on a certain directional input like forward plus special button on the modern control scheme. Your character is able to mix and match the various special moves and even choose between enabling or disabling moves unique to your moveset, such as Ken's sprint ability. Allowing players to choose movesets in this fashion encourages creativity because there is a limited amount of special move slots available. It is best to optimize after all. The process of selecting the best moves for your playstyle makes people have to think about how things connect. Should I add Luke's rising upper move because it looks dope, or take Ryu's Shoryuken because it can actually work in my combos? Questions like that become common. Speaking from experience here, this is the way you need to think when coming up with combos for the regular roster later. But that isn't all World Tour has to offer. There are jobs that you can do to earn money in-game. Each of them is in the form of a different minigame. Now, what blew my mind once I gained access to them was that these minigames weren't some busy work just left there to take up your time. Each job corresponded to a different mechanic in the overarching game. Basketball teaches parrying. Break the boards is all about choosing the moves that will hit the correct area. The pizza shop is all about practicing motion inputs, and destroying the truck encourages the use of long combos in rapid succession. My favorite has to be karate though. That one actually taught me how to use charge characters, which, for the life of me, I could not figure out before. With the amount of grinding you need to do for the important stuff in World Tour, you will get plenty of practice. Moving on to the citizens you beat up, you'll find that the majority of the NPCs are incredibly easy to defeat, even when mashing. Their moves are often overly telegraphed, and there is even a World Tour unique function called pressure time, which is where an NPC gets put into a stunned state by hitting them right at the point that they glow white. Even when they are more advanced, there are always patterns to find. Now, You may be wondering, what's so important about that? Well, it serves as even more training. Pattern recognition is essential in a fight, and whoever can do it more frequently will undoubtedly win. Even the pressure time mechanic exists to train players to look for vulnerable moments during an opponent's attack string or move. Some NPCs use the same fighting styles as the actual roster, but play more like the regular CPUs you'd find in the arcade mode, which serves as your live practice before you go online. To end the World Tour section, I do need to mention that you will find actual tutorials as well. There are 3 NPCs whose sole purpose is to teach mechanics outright and ensure you're capable of doing them before you can move forward. Some of them are actually difficult. I wish I had footage of it, but there's one where you have to do a certain number of hits in an air combo that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. But they aren't mandatory, so you can still learn everything simply by reading about the mechanics once they're unlocked. The game does reward you for completing them, so there is at least an incentive to get all the tutorials done though. Personal opinion here, I think all new players should finish them. The concepts they focus on are incredibly useful later on. After completing or getting far enough in World Tour, you will have not only built a decent foundation for low-level play, but also likely found a character you'd like to try in regular matches. So that leads into the next area for preparation, the fighting grounds.
Fighting grounds.
The fighting grounds are much simpler to explain. This is the mode you'll be spending the majority of your time in if you're not in World Tour. Sorry, Battle Hub. This is where you find casual and ranked matchmaking, arcade mode, and a myriad of training options. These training options consist of training, overall game tutorials, character guides, and combo trials. It's a pretty standard setup for a practice mode, honestly, so it won't take much time to review them. The standard tutorials are very similar to what you can find in World Tour's tutorial NPCs, but the explanation is much more wordy in execution. There isn't so much practicing taking place than an in-depth discussion about the mechanic in question. It's very much a trade-off between mental knowledge and muscle memory, so using both the World Tour and Fighting Grounds tutorials will leave you with a total understanding of every universal system. Once you have the system down, then you need to pick a character. Every character in a fighting game has many unique properties, including normal moves, special moves, dash speed, and so on. And that's where the character guides and combo trials come into play. The character guides are exactly what they say on the tin. They give you an explanation of each special move and super art, a general overview of what the character is about, and finally, a couple of actual strategies. The strategies are basic, but they still give players an excellent foundation to build on when it comes to creating their own game plans. The combo trials are very much the same way, but obviously with an emphasis on what most people consider the hardest part of fighting games, combos. At this point, you have more than enough knowledge to jump into regular matches or start experimenting in practice mode at least. But there's one last thing Capcom added to help new players, and to say it's controversial would be an understatement.
Did I just see a one-button SPD? Listen, the way my reaction time is set up, I can't.
Oh, bother.
There are 2 control schemes available for online play in Street Fighter 6, Classic and Modern. Classic is, like the name implies, the regular 6-button Street Fighter with mandatory motion inputs that's been around for 3 decades now. Modern controls turn it into a 4-button fighter that allows access to automatic combos and motionless special moves, though the full inputs can be used. I'm new, so I'm assuming it's referred to as modern because several fighting games have recently started to move away from motion inputs. Not sure I like that myself now that I've actually managed to learn the inputs, but I do like giving people the option as long as it's fair. That'll have to be a discussion for another time. I began playing Street Fighter 6 using Modern on a gamepad for the first month, so my experience as to how it helps stems from that. Modern controls remove some of the moves a character is capable of using in classic mode, and also nerf the damage of special moves by about 20%, if done with no motion input. For anyone who plays Super Smash Bros., it's essentially the same way that Ryu and Ken work there, where you get a damage buff and different move properties by completing the full motions rather than just pressing side special. So when you start a fighting game, it's very likely that you want to perform cool moves even if you lose, right? Motion inputs and combos are a serious barrier to entry in this case, especially in the middle of a match thanks to nerves. Getting clobbered without even being able to throw out a Hadouken would discourage a lot of people from continuing with the game. Most people aren't masochistic. So, Modern removes that barrier. You can repeatedly press either the light, medium, or heavy buttons to get full combos, or simply press a direction plus the special button to get a special move. With this, anyone can step past that initial physical barrier and focus more on every other aspect of fighting games. You can finally have fun. I believe performing the motions is a significant part of that fun though. So Modern offered me the chance to get used to the game as a whole while gradually learning the necessary inputs instead of having to spend hours in training mode before even touching a match. Eventually, I was able to even switch to Classic and an arcade stick, but I don't think that's a necessary swap. What's most important in a game like Street Fighter is learning good timing, good spacing, and making good decisions with the tools at your disposal. Even some top competitive players make use of Modern sometimes. Just don't let it become a crutch. Relying on auto combos all the time is not the move if you want to actually rise up the ranks. I'd like to end this by emphasizing that you can learn any game if you decide to put the time in. I mean, there was a blind man going by Blind Warrior who competed and even won a match in EVO 2023. Honestly, there's no real excuse to not try after seeing something like that. I just have nothing but praise for this system that Capcom has created. Getting new people into fighting games has always been difficult, so the depths that Capcom went to draw in a new audience and funnel them into the online play without just throwing them to the wolves is great. I think this is clearly represented by how many players are still around even 2 months after release. If you want to try fighting games casually or more seriously, I really think this is the one you should start with. Thanks for making it this far. I hope you enjoyed the breakdown. I originally went to college for game design, so whenever I find a well-designed mechanic in a game, I kind of have to gush about it. If you've got any thoughts on the latest Street Fighter, leave them down below. Until next time, stay blessed.